Hello, everybody. My name's Dan, aka Duckface, and real quick here, if you have a high performance, high end gaming PC that is underperforming consistently, and you feel like all these new games are just so poorly optimized, right? Here's what we're gonna do to remedy that. I just figured out something that for a year and a half, my PC was running frames really choppy, really laggy. It wasn't running well. It wasn't doing anything like any games even remotely up to where it should be. What I would start with is first of all go to System Requirements Lab. So you just go to Can you run it? And right here you have the System Requirements Lab, and what it'll do is it'll download a diagnostic once you try to see if you can run it, and all that diagnostic will do, it's not spyware or anything like that. I've already scanned it. There's no Trojan horses or anything. What it does is it will check what your graphics card is and what your processor is. And what you can do is you can check it out. So I have under rate my PC. It's got processor. Go category. Okay, mine's an extreme. Go to graphics. Go to category. Mine's an enthusiast, which is above high performance. So basically, um, both both of my pieces of equipment are top of the line. So okay, why am I frame lagging in Call of Duty, right? So then we'll go to game lists. I'll just click Fortnite, whatever, who gives a shit. And then I'll go 98 of the top 100, and now it's going to run all these games. So here we go. Minimum 100%, recommended 98%. And these games that I do have, I have played Arc at maximum settings and it was fine, and Cyberpunk at maximum settings and it was fine. The only thing I can't do is like 4K ray tracing. So I think that keeps that into perspective because I think it's the 7800 X30. Yeah. So the only thing that I can't really do is like the Ultra DLSS 4K ray tracing. Other than that, pretty good. So I kept looking this up. People kept saying I have this high end PC, I'm lagging in all these games, and I did too. And not one thing ever mentioned this. So basically, if you go into your CPU tuning software, first of all, what you should do is if you have your CPU tuning software, you didn't flash your BIOS, you have to flash your BIOS. So what usually happens is on my PC, when you open it up, there is a little port, and it says it'll say BIOS. And what you do is you plug a USB with the only the BIOS on it. You delete everything else. You get a USB, put the BIOS on it, and then you hold a little button for mine. But basically, if you go into system and you look at it'll say it right there, processor. If you look at your processor and you Google that, how to flash BIOS. So, for example, how to flash BIOS, Risen, or it's off your motherboard. I'm sorry, it's off your motherboard. So, it's an ARS. I have the box for it somewhere, but I would if you have the box for your motherboard, that would really help. Or if you can look and find the brand for it, that also is helpful. So basically, you just look up like how to flash BIOS on this motherboard. So you start with that. So if you haven't done that yet, look that up, start with that. Then come to this next step. So the next step is what I realized was when I set this up, I put it into game mode. So I was like, all right, I play games. So I put it into game mode. And I put auto overclocking on. I'm like, this is going to be great, right? Do you notice any problems? I'll give you a second. So basically, when you look down in the core section, look up top, it says 12 core processor, right? Ryzen 9 5900X, 12 core processor. Well, I'm in game mode and I look at core section, there's only 6 cores being used. So my fastest core is core 2. That's cool. Second fastest core. Okay, that's cool. But then I go to creator mode and I have 12 cores. So what happened was I was in a setting for the last year and a half with a 12 core processor only using 6 cores. And when I was trying to record Red Dead Redemption 2, I was putting it on really low settings and it was still super choppy. So then I go into AMD Risen Master and I click creator mode and I go to auto overclocking and I hit apply, and then it'll say you need to restart my PC, come back up, play the game, and I go into NVIDIA app, which down here in your tray there will be an NVIDIA control panel type thing. You just right click it and hit NVIDIA app, and then you'll start at home here. First of all, make sure that you have drivers. If your games are acting weird, you can start with reinstalling your drivers. I know my problem personally was not a driver thing. A lot of people's problems can be solved if they reinstall their drivers. So go here to drivers, make sure to click check for updates, because the app is kind of clunky with how it checks for updates. I remember beforehand, before there was an NVIDIA app, it just worked where I would just click, it would show me that there's a little notification for an update and it would work immediately. Boom. This one was kind of weird at first. I would like click check for updates and it wouldn't do it. I knew there was an update that I needed. And also on this website, it's always going to say that your graphics driver is out of date, right? It says it's 1 month out of date. The last driver officially from NVIDIA is not even 2 weeks old yet. So, where I think it's just coming up on 2 weeks old. It's almost 3 weeks. Yeah, it's exactly 3 weeks today. Huh, my semblance of time isn't great. But yeah, so, you could reinstall the driver. I was having an issue where every time I installed my driver, my screens would go black, right? First thing I did was I would waited 20 minutes, right? Let it do anything. I didn't want to corrupt any data, so I let it sit for 20 minutes. Use the button to restart it, which you should never do, but that was a black screen, so there's nothing I could do. First thing I did was I come back on in safe mode, reinstall the drivers. Never had that problem again, right? Next step, go to graphics. Click on a game that you want to play, Red Dead Redemption 2. Boom, click optimize. I've changed the settings for stream. There's a couple settings that I have a little bit turned down just because I like to cut a little slack when I'm streaming, so there's no dip in performance. You click optimize. Now keep in mind, I'm going to reiterate this point probably a couple more times throughout the video. When you click optimize, it goes off of your PC specs, not off of your performance settings. I'll say it again. It goes off of your PC specs, not off of your performance settings. So it's going to read your graphics card and it's going to read your processor and it's going to go off of those specs and it's going to make those settings. Before you start a game and your PC sounds like it's going to take off to space, go through this step first with your processor and make sure that you're booting up enough power on your processor and you're using the full power of your processor to be able to run those settings, because a lot of it is processor intensive. So you go to system, and right there it'll say what your processor is. If you don't know what your graphics card is, you can right click down here on start and go to device manager and then go right to display adapters. And there you go. That's your graphics card. And now when you look at it, Intel CPU tuning software, you have the Intel Extreme Tuning Utility if you have an Intel CPU. And then AMD Graphics Drivers app, you have the AMD Software Adrenaline Edition application for all of your Radeon graphics cards. So if you have those versions, that's where you go. I personally don't know those pieces of software because ever since I built this, I've had a AMD processor, and I've had an NVIDIA. Oh, geez, sorry. I've had an NVIDIA graphics card. So that's the software I know how to use. Okay. And now, since I am a creator, since I am a streamer, I'm also going to go and talk a little bit about Streamlabs desktop settings, because what people do is they say like, these are the best settings. There is no the best settings for Streamlabs. Okay, there is no best settings for OBS. It doesn't exist. So what you do is you click settings and you start to learn what the settings do, and you understand how that correlates to your PC. So you go to stream, you connect yourself into all these different things, you go to output. Okay, so we look at our output here, streaming. Use the NVIDIA NVENC H264 new if you have, like, so this is for people with higher end PCs are probably more likely to use it. So yeah, you're going to use that, but if you can use the old one or you can use the standard encoder that they have at the top for that. CBR is what you want as rate control. 6,000 bit rate is the max. That's what I like to use. You go to preset, P5 slow, If you're struggling, this is a setting that will really help. You can slow it down more, but you're gonna sacrifice quality on streaming for that. If you use the sets that are lower than that, you could go up a little bit faster. I could probably go up a little bit faster for some better quality, but I don't want to really stress my PC out that high. So tuning, I have it on high quality because now I'm running 12 cores, right? I'm running 12 cores overclocked to 4.8 gigahertz, right? So I have plenty of power to be able to run high quality, but you can run the performance. This will really help. Profile should always be on high because this will make it the highest priority for your your CPU and your RAM. This is going to make it the highest priority to be used here. Psychovisual tuning should be activated, and then you go to recording. Again, same recording codec. MP4 is your recording format. Go to rate control CBR bitrate 8000. I like to turn my bitrate up a lot. You can turn it up to like 16,000 if you want. Get like insane quality. Same thing here, the tuning, all those kinds of things, psychovisual tuning. Go to audio, 48 kHz. Cool with that. Make sure your inputs are in. Also, make sure when you go down here that you have your properties and that you have these set as like your mic and your desktop audio. There's been many a time that I've been streaming and I have no audio because they're not set correctly. So then you go to video. This is a huge one that no one talks about correctly. They just say, all right, so what you want to do is use your base resolution at what your base resolution is and put your scaled. So, keep it what it is or put it at 1980 by, 1920 by 1080 or 1280 by 720. Look, this is dependent on your monitor. My monitor is 2560 by 1440. Scaling your resolution is depending on the power of your PC. I have a high-end PC. I don't need to scale, right? But I could scale down to 1080 or I could scale down to 1280 by 720 if I wanted to. Here's another problem that people run into. Why is my stream so blurry? Because you put the downscale filter that the guy on the tutorial is telling you, but you're not reading it. Bilinear, fastest, comma, space, but blurry if scaling. Guess what? You know why I'm saying it like that? Because if somebody made a video saying it like that to me, I wouldn't have made that mistake. So I had my stream blurry for the longest time because I was scaling down to 1080 because I wasn't running my cores, right? So all of these things were a cause of each other. And basically, you can use the bicubic 16 samples if you're scaling down. I would say if you're at a PC where you have to scale down to 720, the 16 sample bicubic's better. If you're scaling down to 1080, I think 32 samples is personally better. If you're not scaling at all, you could still use bicubic. Just, maybe your internet's a little slower, stuff like that. But this downscale filter and the way that you use it can be a huge benefit to make your stream look better. If you're not scaling and, or if you are scaling and you're using bilinear, it will be bad quality. Okay, you're gonna be running in 1080, but it's gonna look like your eyes when they're out of focus because you've been drinking too much or something like that. Okay, so that's not what you want. Go to hotkeys, put out the hotkeys however you want. Advanced, the color format should be this, and the color space should be this. Color range should be full. And then you go to here, force GPU as render device. Again, assuming that you're somebody with a high-end PC, always check this. Why? Because when you're recording, the GPU will live render, and then when you're streaming, it'll render some of that over as well. It'll take some stress off your CPU because recording is a very processor-intensive thing. So you want to make sure that when you're recording and streaming, that you are trying to take as much off of it as you can. Scene collections, all these different things don't really necessarily matter. Appearance, enable better TTV emotes and all that kind of stuff. Sure, whatever, who cares? Remote control, virtual webcam, game overlay. Make sure game overlay is off. If you have the game overlay on, in a lot of games, it's going to cause you to frame lag. If you have a high-end PC, you can use this, right? But the game overlay is not really needed. So we are going to be done. A lot of this is preferences. You can configure default devices. I personally think it's much better to learn the settings yourself. Next thing, get a monitoring software for your temps. Okay, your thermals are extremely important to monitor. The reason why is because now you're going to be experimenting with overclocking. You're going to be experimenting with tuning your CPU, which, by the way, do not go into manual settings. Use pre-settings. Okay, because if you go into manual and you hit the wrong thing and you do it, like your CPU, you can, I mean, you could potentially burn it up and kill it. If you have a high end PC, the chances of that are considerably lower, but still don't want to really mess with it. The pre-settings are more than good enough for anything you need. Auto overclocking settings with these cores going all the way up to 4.8 gigahertz, there is no need whatsoever for any more power for any game. Okay, this will run literally everything fine. Okay, so like right now I'm recording at like almost lossless quality, and I am at 6% load. Right, my temperature 50 degrees, and this is 50 degrees. Right, when you're running a game, if you have a second monitor, leave this open, or you can alt tab, check on this, because what you're gonna notice is your thermals are good now the way you have it set. But if you're only using half of your CPU's power and you upgraded like to a new cooling system off of what you were currently running it on, and now you're ramping up the productivity of your CPU, you have to monitor your thermals because your cooling might not be good enough anymore for what your actual CPU is. I got lucky enough and I got the NZXT Kraken 360 Elite. So I have uh the 3 fan liquid cooler, which is almost like it's like almost overkill for any system, but it just looks really cool for one, and for two, I want my CPU like these new AMD CPUs run hot. Like my AMD CPU used to run at like 90 degrees when I had a Noctua air cooler, like an old one before these new ones came out that were like $20, and they're able to disperse heat so ridiculously efficient. But I just like the way that liquid coolers look. But now I run games at like maximum 40% load, and my temps go to like 65, right? So it's like chilling. It's nothing. So, but keep an eye on those things while you're changing your settings. Be careful. And like I said, you go in, you optimize, but make sure that you start and you do these steps in the order that I showed you. And then, like I said, before you want to buy, if you want to buy a game on Steam or something like that, just go into Can You Run It? Like, look, ooh, I really want to get Black Myth Wukong, right? Um, all right, I'm good. Like, oh, I really, really, really want to get Baldur's Gate, which I actually do want to eventually play Baldur's Gate 3, right? But I'm like looking at this. Okay, RAM, I'm good. I'm like more than good here. Okay, now we come up here. I'm more than good, and then learn like pixel shader, vertex shader, dedicated VRAM, all these different things, right? Learn what these things are. And one last thing, if you aren't sure how many cores your CPU has, you can Google it, or you can hit Control Shift Escape, open up the task manager, go to performance, go to CPU, 12 cores, right there. There you go. So I hope that this taught you guys how to have your high end CPUs running better. One last thing that you can do is you can defrag and optimize your drives if that's not already set. So it says 6 days since last retrim. You can What you can do is you can have it scheduled. I think like once a week is more than enough. Have it scheduled to defrag. It'll analyze and optimize your drives to keep them clean, and you can do that. And you can also get a disk cleaning service, and it'll clean all your cache files and stuff like that out too. That's the last little thing you can do to keep it up to speed. But with the amount of RAM and stuff I have, I'm not super worried about that. I do it every now and again. It's not very often for me. So I hope this is able to help you guys with those high performing PCs that were really underperforming for all these games. I know it really changed the whole world for me, and really made me able to run all my stuff on higher settings. So I hope it was helpful. If you guys have any questions, leave it down below. Thank you very much for your support. And if I helped, hey, leave me a follow on my stream. That link will be in the description, or sub to my YouTube. Leave a like. Thank you guys very much. Have a good one.